nightmare. Our subject is what happened to the country in the decade just ending. We begin with the nightmare. You take that nice American sport, baseball, and put it in the 70s, and what happens? Well, the Chicago White Sox went a little crazy with defeat and asked for help from a guru.
And you're going to really get to know the item now, okay? You take the ball and the bat in the same way, hold it out in front of you like that, move it towards your forehead, and touch your forehead with it. Then touch your forehead and project yourself inside of the ball. 1, 2, 3. You are now inside the ball, any depth of this dimension you desire. How much light do you sense?
It didn't work. In 1976, after receiving these meditational seances, the Chicago White Sox finished dead last in the American League. Baseball, a team sport, had gotten trapped in the me generation. The me generation, the disco decade, when real people glittered and danced almost as well as movie stars.
Marilyn is a broadcasting student whose goal is to become a television director. Crispin is a graduate student heading for environmental biology. He's also a part-time DJ at a discotheque.
The me became me first when it spilled into our public life. People often felt that their private interests were being invaded by government. Rage and hostility mounted. Everybody could be criticized.
You know what it feels like to have a freedom denied you. We've had the freedom of sending our children to neighborhood schools taken away from us.
Can I speak? Isn't part of
the
our
people
speaking?
don't care to hear you.
Your kids. Bust your kids, Teddy.
The late 70s were an angry era. Journalists found that something in our national character responded as it never did before to the expose of the ripoff, the scam, the hustle, the cheat.
It doesn't look like much of a spot out of which to gross $1 million.
State investigators.
Sir, you have no right to be here. I ask you to leave. You're interrupting a business.
Don't.
I'm sorry, sir. You have no right. Don't touch me, and don't you dare take my picture without permission.
What scared us most was inflation, the destruction of our money. The same government which urged us to hold the line on spending was often printing money top speed 7 days a week. If you couldn't trust the value of money, then the value of everything money buys became questionable. Inflation meant high prices and high tempers. Inflation was getting worse at the end of the 70s because we couldn't stop the government printing presses. At the same time, someone was trying to stop our wheels. The American dream was based on mobility, moving up, moving freely from one place to another. In the late 70s, the nightmare was that the moving would be stopped. Gas cost $1 for 3 gallons in 1970, but that same gas cost 3 times as much in '79. We may have used gas in crazy ways, but nobody before had tried to restrict our freedom of movement. In the beginning of the decade, the oil game was an American game, and some people always got rich from oil. But they were our people, getting rich on our oil. By the end of the era, Americans found they were dancing to somebody else's tune.
Of OPEC have still not been able to decide by how much to increase the price of oil. Saudi Arabia...
Fiction says some things better than fact. A scene from the film Network caught the anger of Americans. It touched the dark side of the heart, and it added a phrase to everyday language.
Take 2, Q Howard.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. punks are running wild in the street. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I want you to get up right now. Get up, go to your windows, open them, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Stick your head out of the window, open it, and stick your head out and keep yelling. And
I'm mad as hell!
I'm mad as hell! I'm not going to take it anymore!
I'm mad as hell! I'm not going to take it anymore!
I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to
take it anymore!
I'm mad as hell!
Written early in the 70s, this film caught one of the moods of the whole decade. But fictional films aren't our business. We can just give you an analysis of the non-fictional events that shape the times we live in. Condensing 10 years into 2 hours means leaving out a lot. The end of this decade is best explained by looking closely at its beginnings. If you think about Iran, for example, the geography of the mind takes you back to Vietnam, because ever since we lost that war, some nations seem to see America as a vulnerable giant, and Americans now view any foreign adventures warily. The presidential campaign of 1980, just getting underway, still must reckon with the events of Watergate, because ever since that scandal, Americans have viewed their government with suspicion. So our deeper purpose is not a listing of events, but a reconnaissance into the national character, an estimate of the American mood at the end of what's being called the cynical 70s. And what we'll be examining tonight and tomorrow night are the cross connections between the major events that happened early in this decade, the hidden history that ties Watergate to Vietnam to today. You'll probably remember the 70s more for what happened to you personally than what happened to the public record. Maybe you've noticed that manners have changed, particularly in the dialogue between men and women. The change started early in the 70s, and it may have been the most important story of the decade. We've limited ourselves to those subjects about which time has given us new perspective and research has given us new information. Our theme was stated by Oliver Wendell Holmes, who said, when I want to understand what's happening today to decide what to do tomorrow, I look back. The 70s, worth a look back, because we've all just given that decade 10 years of our lives. Another view of America, a dream of this country that may be disappearing. Maybe the old dream is too simple for our times. The cowboy, the good guy in a white hat, rode into town with law and order behind him and beat up all the bad guys. One of the very last national heroes was a USC football player who died this year, John Wayne. Everything about the character he played was open, trustworthy. You could follow this leader. He made us think we could be heroes too, because, as Emerson said, a hero is no braver than an ordinary man, but he's braver 5 minutes longer. If he was in a dark place, this older American dream said, don't worry, good always triumphs over evil, and might is right. The cowboy, the greatest American folk hero, may have had a doubt, but he had an answer, too.